was a cloudy afternoon. I was stuck in traffic when I happened to hear about a radio program about the international aid organization Give Directly. Now, at the time, Give Directly was very controversial because unlike other aid organizations, they don't provide medicine or school supplies or sports equipment or cows. They give people money. And what happens when you give people money that they can spend on anything at all? We'll get to that soon. So at the time, I was commuting home, and I was the new version of a typical American worker. I worked in an office in California with about half of my company, and the other half worked overseas. I was a contract worker, though arguably, given the nature of my labor, I could have been a full employee, and also had a side hustle as a freelance writer. We've gone from an economy where you were expected to probably just have one job for your entire career, to one where you might have 10 jobs before you're 35, often several at the same time. And that's not the only thing that's changed for the American worker. Here's national GDP, a rough but functional measurement of the size of our economy from 1953 to 2017. And as you can see, it goes up and up and up. Now, what does that mean for the American worker? Well, here's the first 30 years of that graph alongside real median family wages. And those too went up and up and up. The rising tide lifted all boats. But if you came of working age in the mid-80s or later, it's been a very different story for you. Real median wages rose more slowly, had longer periods of decline, and the correlation between American success and American worker success largely broke down. What happened? Well, there's a tangle of interrelated factors. Globalization, for one, meant that American workers were no longer competing with just each other, but the rest of the world. Automation meant that companies can now get more labor out of less human input. And contract work went from a small sliver of the economy to an increasingly prominent sector, and those jobs tend to be temporary and without benefits. Meanwhile, there is a concerted effort to reduce the power of organized labor, which has been quite successful. Today, half of American families cannot afford an unexpected expense of just $400. It used to be that the rising tide lifted all boats. Now the tide is rising, and that's great if you can afford a boat, but everyone else is struggling just to stay above water. Now, what brought me from someone who was aware of these issues to an activist working for change was learning about automation. Every day, machines and artificial intelligence are getting smarter, faster, better, cheaper, and more able to replace human labor. And we really don't know what the economy is going to look like in 5 years, let alone 10 or 20. And that got me thinking seriously about universal basic income. Universal basic income, or UBI, is the idea of cash dividends to every single person in a city, state, or country unconditionally and at regular intervals. It's like Social Security for everyone. And the more I looked into it, the more I saw that UBI is much more than a response to automation. It's a level of financial security at a time that is increasingly tumultuous economically. It's a simple, stigma-free benefit program when many of our benefit programs have complicated application processes that are often time-consuming for the applicants and humiliating as well. And finally, it's a way to invest and value every single person in our society. But that's a lot of high-minded rhetoric. Let's get back to the question we started with. What happens when you give people money that they can spend on anything at all? Well, fortunately, we don't have to wonder. There's a wealth of evidence on this very topic from basic income trials in the US, Canada, Mexico, India, Kenya, and many other places, as well as corroborating data from related US economic programs like the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Child Tax Credit, and the Alaska Permanent Fund. To summarize quite a lot of research on basic income and cash transfers, when you provide people a modest amount of unconditional cash that they can use on whatever they like, some things go up, some things go down, and a few things stay the same. Okay, what goes up? Preventative health care, newborn birth weights, healthy diets, school attendance, student performance, high school completion rates, college enrollment, entrepreneurship, economic activity, household savings, long-term earning power. All of that happens with just a little bit of cash. Okay, what goes down? Food insecurity, high interest debt, seasonal illnesses, emergency room visits both for physical and mental issues, and domestic violence. All right, and lastly, here's what stays the same. Inflation, alcohol and drug use, employment rates, workforce participation. And let me linger here an extra moment because these are some of the most common objections people have when they first hear about the idea of basic income. Will inflation rise, mitigating the actual benefits of the program? Well, no, they don't. As long as you have a robust market where people have multiple places where they can get groceries and other goods and services, you see no inflationary effect. And that makes sense because while the basic income might be transformative on an individual level, the actual dollar amount is dwarfed by other macroeconomic forces such as people's salaries and other government programs. Do people drink the money away? Do they spend it on drugs? The research here is unequivocal. No, they do not. Some studies show no increase at all in alcohol and other temptation goods, and the rest show an actual decrease. And lastly, do people quit their jobs? No, they do not. And again, this makes sense because even the most aggressive basic income proposals and trials give people $1,000 a month per person. And that will bring you about up to the poverty line. Most people want to live above the poverty line, and they value the income from their jobs and perhaps the work itself. And so I got very excited about the idea of basic income, and I joined a burgeoning basic income community in my area. And what I realized is that the reason you see so many powerful changes in such diverse areas of life is that basic income addresses the root problem of poverty directly. We are paying so much for the symptoms of poverty. The journal Social Work Research estimates that the maladies and difficulties associated with child poverty cost our economy $1 trillion every year. We could end child poverty for $72 billion just by giving people money. And so stories about basic income in the media have gone from occasional to monthly to now almost daily. And the movement had real strong momentum until you got to the actual people who could make it happen tomorrow if they really wanted to. And those are our elected officials, our politicians. Now, like most people, a politician is not going to do something that could cost them their job. And basic income, it's just unnecessary controversy to a politician. And like one state representative explained to me, sure, this sounds like a great idea once you explain the concepts and the data and the research and the philosophy, but politicians hate explaining. To them, explaining is losing. And what I realized is that there's only one way that I can make a politician unafraid to talk about basic income, and that was to become one. So I ran for office, California Assembly to be specific. And through my candidacy, I introduced thousands of people to the idea of basic income, started hundreds of conversations, and even got a few of my opponents to publicly support basic income, including one who will be on the ballot this November after making it through the primary. After every candidate forum I did, people thanked me for bringing this issue into the conversation, and young people especially see this as an important and necessary part of the political conversation going forward. And I wasn't alone. The 2018 cycle saw basic income candidates across the country. The California Democratic Party adopted it into their party platform, and there will be basic income trials in Stockton, California next year, as well as 2 US states in a separate study. Leaders from both sides of the aisle and people around the world are starting to see the merits in this idea. Some people see it as the most effective, efficient way to fight poverty. Others come at it from a racial justice angle because our anti-poverty programs have historically divided people along racial lines. Environmentalists are joining the movement as well because a carbon dividend in which we'd put a price on carbon extraction and distribute the revenue evenly could be one of the most effective ways to fight climate change. Some people are very excited by a program in which almost every dollar spent on it would go toward helping people because there would be no need for means testing or other bureaucracy. Some people feel that there should be some form of compensation for the 1.2 billion hours Americans do every single week in uncompensated domestic labor. And finally, some people recognize that It's very difficult to be an entrepreneur or even pursue a higher degree without some level of financial security, and that we undoubtedly have brilliant potential scientists, artists, entrepreneurs, inventors who are just working low-wage jobs right now because they have no financial security whatsoever. However you get there, we need your voice and your support in this conversation, and you need to make yourselves heard. And some of you ought to run for office. Now, when I was running, I would sometimes end my speeches with the line, "This is an idea whose time has come." But the thing is, ideas don't just float in by themselves on a cloud. They're carried by people. They're fought for, argued for, debated, defined, negotiated. Basic income won't happen because it's a good idea. It will happen because the people who see how transformative it is stand up and make it happen. So instead, I'll end like this. Don't wait for an idea whose time has come. Rise up and fight for it. Thank you.